Gracie is joining us today, right there next to Haven. This is Gracie. We'll all meet her in a minute. But it looks like you have a spooky light behind you. That light will not stop. We have like a electrical short in our bonus room.
It doesn't work very well.
I was curious about the slow strobe.
It's not intentional. Okay, Leah, do you have a drink? She's still getting a drink. Okay, well, let's take a deep breath because we made it through this week specifically. I mean, I am only going to assume that you are as maybe not well rested, right? That it's been a roller coaster of emotions for you this whole week, and maybe for more reasons than just the election and staying glued to the TV and counts and whatnot. But hopefully some of us, or maybe all of us, are breathing a little bit more sighs of relief today, at least about the election. There's plenty more to be sad about and frustrated about, but we will name honor where honor is due, and that's the American people that chose to vote, and in the amazing community organizers all over the South and in Michigan and Pennsylvania that literally got it all together and got it done on our behalf. So much to celebrate. Chris, give us a toast to start it off. I like it.
First, a toast to Stacey Abrams of Georgia,
Yes.
who registered 800,000 new voters in the last 2 years. Amazing. And a toast to President-elect and Vice President-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. A toast. Who, in his speech last night, gave a Bible verse and quoted a Catholic hymn called On Eagle's Wings. Insane. Insane. A toast. Thank you.
Haven and Gracie are doing grapes. I love it.
Can I add to the toast?
Yes, add.
I will add to the toast that President-elect Biden specifically named transgender and disabled people in his speech.
Cheers.
So to those people and the organizers, to all of the women who worked with Stacey Abrams and alongside of her, and to all the Black women who are organizing here in town, who are doing the work that we may not see the benefits of yet, but wow, I'm getting real religious. We have faith that we will.
Love it. Cheers. Oh, it's going to be a good hour, I have a feeling. And we may not get through everything I have planned, and that's okay too, because again, there's much to celebrate. Well, I'm just excited to see each of your lovely faces yet again and be reminded of, 4 years ago, almost all of us, save 2, well, 3, including Gracie, we're a part of a community where I had to get on the platform the Sunday after the election and try to curate and preach a sermon about beauty. And I was just reflecting really this whole week, but especially today, thinking about this community and where we are and the work we are part of and the people that are involved in us. And I was just so grateful. So please just know, as I'm starting today after those beautiful toasts, that I'm grateful for this, for what we're doing, for how we're growing, for how we're individually changing, which is a lot about what I want to talk about today. And how we're figuring it out and continuing to figure out how we do the work. So just know first, I'm so, so grateful for you. Gracie, for your benefit, just because this is your first time listening in, Gracie is one of Haven's dear friends, and she'll be able to introduce herself in a minute. But I've talked a lot with Gracie. Gracie's had lots of questions about what Imaginarium is and what we stand for. And Gracie, if you'll remember everybody else, I shared a couple weeks ago that I had the honor of sharing with Haven, of sharing our Stop, Breathe, Know Your Worth practice with one of Haven's friends. And that was with Gracie specifically, and how that really helped her one night when she was having a rough time. And so anyways, what we're doing is spreading out. And I'm so glad that she wanted to come participate, at least in this beginning practices tonight. with us. So Gracie, we're a community that believes in the inherent value and worth, what we call magic, of every living human being and the natural world around us. We also believe in the inherent connection we have then to each other, to every human being, and to the natural world around us. And lastly, and equally, our inherent responsibility then to ourselves, to each other, and to the natural world. Those are sort of our centering values, and everything that we do comes back to those three things. That's sort of our why behind our mission. And then we do spiritual practices. We call them spiritual because we believe all of life is spiritual, and each of these practices are not just a fun thing to do. They're not just a performative thing to do. They're rituals that are meaningful to us. So in this moment, we're reminded that these practices that we share every other Sunday are things that we're hopefully getting embedded into our hearts and minds and souls, that we can use them when we're not together as well. So Leah is gonna kick us off first.
Yes, I am. So the first practice that we do is called a naming practice. And this will hopefully be familiar to everybody. It's something we do here and in other spaces a lot. But here specifically, it's a reminder to take up your space. If you're not someone who talks a lot, use your voice, take up space, let us get to know you a teeny tiny bit. And if you take up too much space, just take up less space. Just take up a little bit, leave space for others. That's me. So yeah, so share your name, where you are right now, and your pronouns if you feel comfortable. So my name is Leah. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in East Nashville. Oh, okay. And I guess in terms of order, I'll just pop it to someone and then they can introduce themselves. Okay, Nathan, you're up first.
Nathan Johns. I'm in Lebanon, Tennessee. He, him pronouns.
Melissa, she, her, hers pronouns. I am in Franklin, Tennessee, in my bedroom.
JJ.
I'm JJ, and I am in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am in my kitchen, and he, him, his.
Cool. Haven and your friend.
I'm Haven. She, her, hers. My name is Gracie, and I use the pronoun she, her, hers. And we are in Franklin, Tennessee, in the upstairs.
Cool. Doug.
Hello, everybody. I am Doug Day, or as Haven likes to call me, Dougie Fresh. Franklin, Tennessee. He, him.
Houses.
Chris from coming to you from my home office in Brentwood, and I use he, him pronouns.
I'm Linda, and I don't have a preference. And I'm obviously where he is.
Cindy.
Hi, Cindy Hompus, Spring Hill, she, her.
And Sarah.
I'm Sarah. I'm coming from my side porch in Nashville, Tennessee, and she, her, hers.
And I'm in my living room / kitchen. I didn't know we're supposed to do that part. I'm kidding. Okay, I am going to throw it to, is it JJ? All right, you're up.
All right, it is time for our spiritual practice of Tell Me Something Good. So it's where we take time to point out the good things that happened this week, to just name them and share them so we can celebrate together and celebrate what's happening in our lives. And it goes with a little song, which goes, tell me something good. And so we're all going to sing that together. And so everybody needs to unmute right now. So everybody unmute. Doug, I see you're not unmuted. You're unmuting. Doug, you're going to unmute. I'm making you.
Fresh.
Oh, wait.
We will wait, Doug, until you unmute so that you're part of this participant. There it is.
All
There
right.
it is. Okay.
If you say so.
I did. We're all doing this crazy together. Okay, here we go. When I get to 4, ready? 2, 3, 4.
Tell me something good.
Perfection as always. All right, so who had something that they'd love in the last little bit to share and celebrate that went good? Haven.
It didn't necessarily feel good, but we got flu shots today. Me, Gracie, and Chloe. So it's not necessarily good, but we'll keep everyone safe. So that's good.
That's fantastic. Yes.
This is focusing on the good, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a practice, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Even though I freaked out a little bit. Just a little bit.
But you did it.
So good.
I'm very proud of you. Well done. Linda, I saw your hand.
In the spring, I mentioned that as I was planting my garden, I had something sprout up out of the compost, and it was just, I think they call it a dicot when it only has 2 leaves. And I thought, this looks like it is something. I'm going to keep it. And so I put it in a pot, and then I transferred it to the garden, and it turned out to be a butternut squash, and I got 9 squash from it. And I told the gardener recently about that, and he said, wow, that's more than I got off both of my plants that I planted intentionally. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And while we're here, I've got my biggest billing month. I'm self-employed, and November is my biggest billing month. I mean, probably by like 30 or 40% of my entire self-employed career since 1998 in November. So very, very thankful to have so much work, so much great work, working lots of great fun Christmas songs. So very thankful for that. And I've just remembered that the sprinkler I turned on 2 to 3 hours ago in the backyard was never turned off. So I'm going to go take care of that right now.
Yeah, that would be something good.
Something good to turn that off. Yes. Congrats, Chris. And Monica, welcome.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all doing?
Doing good. We just did the naming practice. So if you want to share your name and pronouns and where you're at, and then we're also just moved on to tell me something good. So if you do have something good, you can also share that at that time.
Monica Mayday, Spring Hill, Tennessee, she, her.
Wonderful. And I see Lauren joined us as well. Lauren, hello. Yay. So good to see you. We just finished the naming practice, and we're going into tell me something good. So if you want to share your name and where you are at the moment.
Hi, everyone. I'm on my front porch in Nashville, Tennessee, looking at my child who's laying out in the front yard. I'm Lauren Pilney, and I'm so happy to see all of you.
Yay. Okay, anybody else tell me something good? Melissa.
So speaking of money, which Chris was just talking about, our dance studio happened to do a fundraiser for the first time. Like, they've never done fundraisers, and they happened to want to do one. And it was, many of you actually contributed to it, so thank you so much. But so we participated in that, and you had to like fill up a calendar and whatnot. So we had every day taken care of, which was such a blessing, because also my my little side hustle job that I work with, BAM Social Business, this is the first month that he's had 0 work. So the company has 0 work, so I have 0 work. And so really what that fundraiser covered almost basically what I would have made in my side hustle. So it was a beautiful, like, okay, great, taken care of. We can breathe fine and not feel stressed about it. So thank you for those of you that were able to participate, but in general, just such a good thing.
Yay.
And I have another one. And Hachi, who we don't talk about much because he's our introverted, quiet child that doesn't like to be talked about. Hachi has, I've told y'all before, playing volleyball. And he's played it all of quarantine and like just took it up and plays by himself in the bonus room, or we'll bump in the front yard. And Dougie has taken him multiple times to go play, but we just found out that they do lessons up at the rec center, which is 5 minutes from our house. And he's taken like 4 lessons now, and he's just killing it. He's doing so good and having so much fun. And it's just really lovely to see him sort of passionate about something. So yay.
So cool. Sarah, did I see your hand?
So this past week, this past Monday, I got to be back in the school building for the first time in like 8 months. We welcomed back about 10 kids to do some intervention work. And as like still apprehensive of it, I am about everything. Our school is doing really great with like putting in very safe protocols and whatnot, but it felt so good to like be in a classroom teaching like live people and just being able to like really be myself again in as a teacher. And it was just so life-giving. And so I just hope this pandemic ends. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Lauren, you haven't raised your hand, but I see something good. And so I'm naming something good even before you are, because I just am too excited.
This is Wilder. She's the best. She's telling me something good every second of the day, even when she refuses to sleep.
Oh, she's perfection.
She's the best.
She's absolute perfection. Oh.
She says hi.
Hi. Haven, I see your hand.
Just kind of adding on with staying with the friends. Yesterday, we found out the new president. Very exciting. And then me, her, and Chloe Kofol decided to celebrate. We got our nails done. So got our nails done and then got some ice cream. And then we played games at home, and it was just a very exciting night. And we got to just hang out, and it was very much fun.
Yes, I was celebrating with you as well. Leah.
I have 2 things. The first, piggybacking on what Haven said and on Chris's toast, but I just need to say it. I am so excited that we have a woman and a Black woman elected to the 2nd highest position in our country. It makes me so happy. It's so good. And then on a personal note, last Sunday it's just a hard day for me annually. But I did thank you to therapy. I texted a friend of mine and said, hey, I'm sad and today's a hard day for me. Will you just randomly text me throughout the day and tell me that you love me and I'm not alone? And then they did. And I felt so loved and not alone because I got these random text messages throughout the day. So I guess it's a double whammy of it made me really happy to feel loved and supported and have a friend that I can ask for that. But also that's like a huge amount of growth for me to be able to like ask for what I need, even something really vulnerable. Because there was definitely a time where I would be like, oh, they don't really love me if I have to tell them, but just, yeah. So growth and community.
Love it. Love it.
I had JJ, I had one more. We've always wanted a pool in our backyard, and now we have one. So that's a really fun,
fantastic.
Very good.
That is wonderful. We all have to get over there real quick before it disappears, I would imagine. But follow-up pool party at your house. Anybody else? Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing, and may this just always be a reminder of, because even as we're sharing like how much I'm smiling and I see everybody else smiling, that it really is a practice to, in the midst of everything, name the good that is in the world and share that with each other and for ourselves and for other people who are out there. So now I am going to turn it over to Sarah.
So we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the land. This is actually Indigenous Peoples Month, which is just, you know, scraping the surface of the work that needs to be done, but to be able to acknowledge that. And also, if you haven't read Indigenous authors, like there's so many great lists out there. And, but we want to acknowledge the erasure of the people of the land and acknowledge that we can't own land and acknowledge that this was once inhabited by the Shawnee people. And we know that by naming it is a start to imagining a better world and making it so. And also just to note creation on Tuesday on election day, they were saying it was like record beautiful weather across the country on election day. That's never happened. I think maybe Washington had a little bit of rain, but it was just the most gorgeous weather. So people could be out and voting and there was nothing to, you know, keep them, no obstacles in their way. And I just thought that was a really great, you know, moment from creation saying yes. And then yesterday, the weather was so gorgeous on the day that we find out this change in power. And I just thought that was like such a honor from the universe speaking to us. So.
Nathan, I think you're up.
Okay, sorry, I was waiting for the prompt. So we're doing the anti-racism statement, and so it goes a little something like this. We as a community recognize that white supremacy and systemic racism are an insidious part of our society. Intentional or not, we recognize the harmful impact of its presence in our lives and the impact it has on Black, Indigenous, and people of color members of this community and other communities around us. We commit ourselves to an active practice of anti-racism. We commit to rooting out and addressing racism whenever and wherever we find it, starting within each of us, but extending into our communities and the greater world around us. And so I'll turn it over to Haven to lead us in the Stop, Breathe, Know Your Worth.
Okay, so this is an embodiment practice to help you trust yourself and trust your body. And so you're gonna put your hands together like this, spread your fingers wide, and you go from thumb to pinky, touching all fingers, and you're gonna say, as you're touching one finger at a time, you're gonna say, stop, breathe, know your worth. All together. Stop, breathe, know your worth. Say it with me. Stop, breathe, know your worth. Thank you. Also, I don't know who to pass it to, so.
Pass it to me. I loved that gentle yet commanding. Say it with me. Thank you all. So I wanted to do one more practice today before we talked a little bit about change. And it's an abbreviated portion of a loving kindness meditation, which I think we will do in its fullness at our next gathering heading into Thanksgiving week, or I should rather say the holiday week that we'll all be going into. So right now, though, I just invite you, bye, Haven and Gracie. We love you both. Glad you were a part of this first part. Have fun. Okay. So yeah, I just want to invite you first to get comfortable in your seat. Most of you are sitting in chairs, I take it, and maybe try to put both feet on the floor, like uncross your legs to get the best circulation you can get in your body. Sit relaxed, but sit up straight, like feel your posture, but make sure you're relaxing your shoulders as well, and allow your hands to rest comfortably in your lap. And I invite you to gently close your eyes. So we're settling into an awareness of the body. That is what Haven just led us through, this embodiment practice, again, to trust ourselves and to learn to listen to our bodies. And so this is part of what this practice is right now. So I'm asking you to feel into your body right now and notice what's there. Notice what you are feeling and be open to whatever it is that you're experiencing in your body in this moment. And then I want you to pay attention to your breath, how that breath is connected, how with every breath in, there is a wave-like movement that happens in your belly, and then it moves again with every breath out. So as we're paying attention to our breath in and out, as we're breathing together in this moment, we're going to be cultivating loving kindness, something that I believe we all have in us, this natural capacity for loving kindness, a natural opening for our hearts to be compassionate, not only to ourselves, but also to others. So allow yourself to remember and be open to this goodness that is inside of you, this magic that we talk about, this light, this worth. Remember moments when you have been kind. Remember moments when you've been generous. Recall your own natural desire to be happy, not to suffer. And the last time that you truly felt that feeling. And maybe for some of you, it's been a feeling you felt in the last 24 hours and it's still carrying over. I want us to remember what this feeling is and remember what it feels like in your body, in your neck, in your shoulders, in your arms, in your chest, in your legs, and in your feet. My hope is that with this happiness or joy that you either are remembering or are experiencing now, that you also feel some warmth in that, maybe some heat in your face, maybe a smile, definitely a sense of expansiveness. This is loving kindness, a natural feeling that is accessible to all of us, always. So resting with this feeling of being open and truly unconditionally loving, again, yourself and others. We breathe. And we bask in this energy. Breathing it in. Breathing it out. And with every breath in, we're inviting it more so into ourselves. And with every breath out, we are extending it to others, to those we notice, to those we don't notice, to those that are close to us, and to those that are not, to those we deem as other, even to those that we deem as enemy. We breathe in for ourselves, and we breathe out for others. I invite you to open your eyes. Well, again, it has been a really long and exhausting yet good week. And I'm so thankful that we've already done so many of those celebrations from each of you, just sort of naming what this week and what this historic week, historic last 24 hours, and no doubt what will continue to be a historic transition feels like, and what it points to, which is a lot. It points towards a historic change that is desperately needed. And I was hoping to talk about that for just a few minutes and then us discuss it together in light of what's happening. And I think I wanted to remind us, if some of you were on the community page this week, I posted to check in, and many of you responded to not only the question, but to each other as well. And then we had other voices that are not on this call, but that also chimed in to remind us sort of the breadth of perspectives that those of us in this community hold. And it is like a large, wide breadth, right? There's a lot of room for a lot of different perspectives, different people, not only represented in this community, but that's true of this city, and that's definitely true of this nation, and it's true of the world. And as a deep believer, all of you know, that I deeply believe in our interconnectedness, and that everything and everyone is in relationship to everything and everyone else. I wanted to offer that there's space here within this community and this space, for differing opinions and for differing perspectives. That by no means do we encourage, am I encouraging, or do we as a community encourage that everything needs to be reconciled to just one view. I think there is beauty, and I think all of you here believe this too, that we believe that there's like in multiplicity of thought, there is strength, right? And in diversity of people and views and experiences, that should be honored, and that is a strength of our world and of the human family. And that there are many ways and avenues to do good and to reach a common goal. That being said, I also named that, we've said before, and I'll say it again, there's also, though, the pushback that any view that diminishes life, life of any single person or people group, or that is diminishing life on this earth, will be pushed back against. It will be challenged here. And so we have a deep pluralism at work in our space that is honored, and a deeply held value of the hope that all lives can and should and deserve to flourish, right? That's the work that we are committing ourselves to. And so we gather then in times like today to remind ourselves of that, and to center ourselves, and hopefully also in the midst of our relief and celebration, we also need to ready ourselves for the continual work that needs to be done, for what this moment and the future, I think, is asking of us, so that we can continue to grow and to change and to move forward intentionally. So the whole, the point of Imaginarium and why we chose to make a community like this was not only to be a home for those of us that felt like we had no home in religious spaces anymore. And I know many of us feel like that. That was one thing. It was another point to create a space where, again, lots of people with different values and backgrounds could come together and say, we want to sit together, we want to do life together, we want to learn together from each other, and we want to do the work together. And so I was realizing, again, in the midst of the heaviness of this week, that in general in Imaginarium, but I think in America and in the world, we need this space, and we need to put curiosity first, like prioritize curiosity. We need to look to different people and different ways to be inspired. We need to be dialoguing. I mean, all these things that we do right here in this space. And then we need to take action. It's not just about the inspiration and the challenge and the words that we say, or just the listening that we do in our ears. It needs to like infiltrate into our bodies so that we act and live differently. So I mentioned Sunday 4 years ago, I was preaching the message, which sweet Gregory Woodruff shared this morning on Facebook. The message was titled, "Beauty Can Save the World." Beauty meaning anything that calls or directs us towards wholeness. And I still believe that, like deeply believe that. But in the last 4 years, political parties aside, for a moment, I think all of us agree that we've experienced a leadership that has instead called or directed us not only towards deep division in our country and in the world for that matter, but also a leadership that has given us in so many ways, and I mean us as the human family and us as Americans, his leadership was giving us permission for our deepest and most selfish desires to be prioritized. That's my take on it. And then Trump aside, though, the problem still lies that I think within our humanity lies a selfish desire. Within competing desires for goodness and beauty and everything else, there is still inside of us this selfish desire that wants to prioritize us without accountability and without the honoring of connection. So obviously here in Imaginarium and all of you, I know we deeply honor and encourage self-love. We deeply honor and encourage an awareness of our inherent worth and magic that is missing in so many places and in so many communities that we've been involved in before. So we honor that, we name that, but that is offered right alongside the inherent connection and responsibility. So I think when we see selfishness or where we see selfishness and self-interest being honored alone is where the tragedy happens, right? It's where the damning things, the damning actions seem to occur. And we have either experienced those things in the last 4 years, or we have been bystanders to the tragedies in the last 4 years. And so I want to name some of those tragedies that we've experienced, and I want to offer a trigger warning. For some of you, you're like, I don't need to be reminded of all the shit we've been through. So if you want to mute for a second, I'll type in the chat when I'm done listing it. But by way of reflection and honoring the lives that have been lost in these past 4 years, I name the tragedy at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where Black lives were killed. The targeted violence against LGBTQ plus communities, and specifically the continued murders of trans people. The Black lives that have been taken by the hands of countless police and the systems and structures that are against their flourishing. The pain and the tragedies that gave rise and continue to fuel the Black Lives Matter movement. The rise of white nationalism, such as the white supremacy that was on display in Charlottesville, Virginia. The travel ban against Muslims that was put in place. The pain and the tragedies of sexual abuse that gave rise to the Women's March and Me Too movements. The detention and the deportation of immigrants and refugees at our borders. The separation of families at our borders, the children who are still alone there. The resistance that happened at Standing Rock in place because of the Keystone oil pipeline situation. The clarion call of climate change voiced by scientists and others because of the tragedies experienced due to weather-related catastrophes. And finally, the deaths due to this pandemic that we continue to experience. And this list could go on, right? There's more to be named and honored. And we are, I think, if we choose to be aware, I think we are also in the midst of the sadness and heaviness of all that I just named. I think we're also drowning in the possibility for not just a renewal of some American dream, but a transformation here, right? A transformation of not just a better America, but a better world and a better us. And I think that's where the transformation has to start. It has to start with you and with me, that we need to reconcile relationships. Yes. And I spoke to this, I think on Happy Hour or maybe in the book club, like in light of this week, and especially the first half of the week when we didn't know what was going to happen. And we just realized that literally, half the country was still choosing to vote for this man for various reasons. But we realized, and I named how I have cut off or at least not prioritized spending time with so many of my white friends that I disagree with, or my white family members that I disagree with. I prioritize a lot of other things and pouring into people of color and relationships to build outside of the bubble. But I realized that I needed to reconcile all these white relationships because it's my work to be done with these people, right? So we need to reconcile relationships. We also need to start over with a blank slate or a blank space, however you want to name it, that honors, and we've talked about this before, that honors the pain that so many people have experienced, and also takes responsibility where needed of the harms of our history, whether that's your personal history and my personal history, and definitely the history of America. But that blank space, then once that honoring and that responsibility is taken, then that space should be used for us to come together, to listen, and to learn to trust that only together can we build the type of America we want and the type of world, again, where all lives and the natural world around us can flourish. And so all of that involves change. It involves deep change in how we see, change in how we act, change in how we envision a new world, change in how we build, change in how we are accountable to each other, and change in how we live ultimately together. And I think change has been married to fear for so long that most immediately we resist any idea of change. I think we've been falsely promised assurance, so much so that we believe we need to fight change, or that we could actually withstand change if we push back long enough. When I think change is really the only constant in our lives. It's the only thing that we can count on will happen. And I think the natural world gives us an assurance of this. It plays out literally simply in the seasons, right, that we watch. We're in the midst of this autumn right now, this beautiful fall, and starting to see the changing of leaves. And fall is this reminder to us of harvest and times of production, right? And then that will be followed by winter, this time of rejuvenation, this time of rest, this time where things need to literally fall and die. And then that's followed by spring, this time of planting, this time of planning for so many of us and for nature, and followed finally by the time of summer, which is a time of care and a time of creation. That within this constant cycle of seasons and this cycle of continued change, this is how the earth renews herself, renews itself. And this is how we learn that things grow and they thrive. And so within each turn of the season, I think there's opportunities then for us not only to pay attention and to be comforted that change is needed and helpful, but hopefully also for us to understand that change is needed for us to learn and to ultimately grow. And so I think this is true of the human life too in our journey. Octavia Butler, which y'all have heard me talk about a lot in those books, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. So in Parable of the Talents, which is the second book, she offers this wisdom that's collected by the main character in a book called Earthseed. And in it, she says, here we are, energy, mass, life, life shaping life, mind shaping mind, God shaping God. Consider, we are born not with purpose, but with potential. Also from the first book, and this is a quote we've talked about a lot. She says, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. Now, process theologians, which we've talked about before, would add not only is God change, but God also represents possibility. And that possibility is not only with inside of us, like with us at all times, but possibility is also offering us options in every moment. Like, what will you do with this moment, with what you have inside, with what you are faced with, and with what you are given? Like, that's where I think the one option of control actually lies. Like, that's what we actually have control of, not in the idea that we can be protected from something, not that we can determine what the outcome is going to look in the future, but that right here, right now, in this moment, we can decide what are we going to do with what we have inside and with the circumstances that lie before us. That's also what Valerie Carr so beautifully put in her book that many of us just finished reading or listening to. She says that thing like all we have is this capital M moment, and then the next capital M moment, and then the next. Like, it's a big deal for us to actually be here and be together right now and asking what is mine to do with what is happening right now. So I think being here and being fully present is like step one that so many of us need to be reminded of. That's why we do the breathing exercises and the embodiment exercises, for us to actually catch up to ourselves and be fully here. Then I think step two is where we continue to then become actually aware, more fully aware of everything that is at play and of every perspective that's being offered to us. And we do that by listening, we do that by reading, we do that by expanding our views. And then step three would be to be intentionally responsive to what we know, to what we've learned, to figure out what is ours to do. And I think there's much that we can do. Like, that's my encouragement today. And we've seen there's much that could be done by all the names that you all named in the beginning that literally are doing the grassroots work on the ground, getting voters in the booth to help really, save and help our democracy. Change can be done, but it takes work. So change is here. And I'm wondering if we can choose not to just rest in the goodness of what this week is and represents, because it is much, but also if we can use this as a fuel, right, to give us fire for the work ahead and fire for today and fire for tomorrow, to let us say, okay, we're going to adapt. Like, this will be a big shift for us and we need to adapt, and let us, the world's going to adapt as well. It's not just individuals, but the world. And then to also be willing to continue to say, I need to keep growing. I need to keep listening. I think within that is our hope and our healing. So if Biden's campaign is that he wants to heal this nation, really within that is a lot of work that needs to be done still, but I think that's where the healing can lie. Are we willing to change? Are we willing to own that we do change? Are we willing to encourage change in ourselves and in others? And are we willing to become more than what we currently are? A fun story that I found that I think you specifically, Chris Hauser, are going to love, and I think possibly add to the story with more detail than I could have researched, but just a fun example of change. Bob Dylan, 1966. Some of you may already be familiar with this. I was not. But Bob Dylan had built his whole career up until sort of that season of his life on being a folk singer and playing acoustic guitar, right? And then he chose to switch to playing electric guitar and having a full, huge band with this new, like, powerful rock sound. The stark change seemed to excite a lot of new listeners who wanted that rock sound, but also equally upset many longtime fans and his following. So on a tour stop in 1966 in England, one frustrated fan in the middle of this rock set yells out "Judas" to Bob Dylan, who hears it and who responds, literally turns around to his band and says, "Play fucking louder." That's his response. So Chris is clapping. I love it. So in their eyes, though, these fans, Dylan was the betrayer. Him playing this new style was an act of betraying his fans. And at the same time, though, his playing of a new style was carving out a path to who else he might become as an artist. And so I think that's a good reminder and example for us that when we grow, when we change, when we adapt, we in turn will betray who we were before, and sometimes betray others who want us to stay who we were and who they've grown to love or grown to respect. But in order for something to be different, betrayal has to happen. Doug Paget says a conversion then is a form of betrayal. A conversion then is a form of betrayal. And as I think about this week alone and the votes that I know all of us cast, whether it was Tuesday or early voting, and I think, at least for me, and I know for many of you, how in the past, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, how drastically those votes have changed, right? And many of us are grateful for the ways that we've changed, and thus our voting has changed. But voting aside, I think we've all grown up, and many Americans, and really truly many in the world, grow up with the idea that a static life is actually the good life. Like that a static life is the good life, that we are given an idea, or many of us have adopted a way of thinking from the past, that the past is the only way we should be thinking. We've been fed the idea that the ways that things have always been are the only ways that things should be. And yet we know, all of us on this call know, and are beginning to continue to realize how none of that is true. How with every shift and with every growth, we become more of who we are and more capable of understanding how we are connected with each other and our actions affect the world. So I think within all of that, then there is a deep humility. This is not saying like, oh, now we know, we finally vote right and we've got it all figured out, you know, we have all the answers. No, this is a humility saying like, yes, I feel like I've expanded more, and my vote in this case for this week it matters because it was voting on behalf of more people than just myself. But that isn't to say that I won't learn something new or continue to understand how I'm leaving people out or not caring or not acting on behalf of others. And so that's my challenge. Can we just continue to welcome change? Can we continue to honor difference and diversity and honor listening, like truly listening, whether it's to those that are being overlooked, those that have been hurt, that are being hurt by the way in which American democracy plays out day to day, or those that are hurt because they believed in, you know, a vote for Trump specifically has to do with unborn life. And how do we listen to those voices? How do we lean in? How do we continue to just get fuel for this fire? So we'll continue to make the world a better place. That's my thoughts for today. So I hope that hit you well. I'm interested. I know all of us have gone through deep changes. I mean, many of us have actually literally walked out life at the same time and changed immensely. But as you're reflecting just on the idea of change, I'm interested if you're still open to it. if you're still somewhat fearful of it, if you're still continuing to become aware how your changes affect positively and or negatively other people. Thoughts, reflections, pushback, any of the above.
What was the saying you said earlier? What was betrayal? It wasn't just change was betrayal, or was it change is betrayal?
Well, change, anytime you're changing, you're ultimately betraying who you used to be, because like you're literally letting that thing go. You're letting that thing die. So you're betraying yourself, you're betraying others who want you to stay to the person they've grown to love and know. That's ultimately the thing. And then Doug said conversion is always a betrayal. So when you convert to something different or new, you're going to betray someone.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I think one of the things been processing lately is I have a hard time making big changes without blowing things up. And that's not always bad, but like I'm trying to figure out, like, life gets kind of static and stuff. And so then my reaction tends to be like, all right, I need to quit my job, I need to sell my house, and I need to move to Ireland. And like it goes that far. And it might literally just be that like I need to figure out where I stand theologically right now. And it never feels like I can just change in the moment. It genuinely feels like I need to blow everything up and let everything go, and then I can kind of reconstruct it. And the more you have to risk in that, then it feels harder to change. And so it's just a weird, like that's been my pattern in the past, and it's always actually been for me very healthy and good, but it creates a lot of chaos. And so I'm trying to figure out what that looks like to change from a place of stability on certain things, I guess, and not everything needs to be blown up. And so I don't know. That's just I don't know. That's kind of something, because I feel like COVID has kind of brought out a bunch of stuff of where I've kind of re-looked at everything and gone, all right, what life do I want to be living? And what life, what are things that I realize need to be priorities for me in order to thrive? But then part of that, my instinct then in that is to kind of just blow everything up and start over. And I don't know that that's always healthy for me or for those around me. And so, just in being vulnerable in the sense of, so I've lived now in Nashville for 5 years, and this is the longest I've lived anywhere. And this is the longest I've had a single job. And because my life has always been built on the idea of like, I'm going for that next adventure. And I don't feel like I'm done with Nashville, and I don't feel like I'm done with my job, but I feel like there's some things that I want to change. And I don't actually know fully how to do that without blowing everything up.
I hear you. And I mean, what I hear you saying, I immediately thought like there can be both sides are good. Like they're both approaches are healthy, right? One isn't necessarily unhealthy and the other not. Because I could totally see how there'd be a part of you that's like, I want to change everything, but really it's an interior work that I need to do. That's really what I'm wanting, but it's easier to shift all of this, right? So that could be an unhealthy part. But then there's also the other side of sometimes you need to change all of this to really let this be clear. So I get it. It's
like there have been times where that's really, really worked for me. I'm not sure it would work this time. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out, I think.
Well, and I'm a fan of, listen, sometimes things need to burn and get blowed up. And other times that if it's just for the sake of destruction, to your point, unhealthy and not helpful. But at times it is good, meaningful work to do that too. So we encourage you as you figure that out.
Thank you.
Then that also makes me think of like the nature of change and how we structure our lives. And I don't know, like JJ, I really resonate with what you said because I'm very much a habit person. And like changing one part of your life doesn't only mean changing one part of your life. Like if I don't know, this is like not a deep thing, but if I move, then my commute to work changes and how I relate to work might change and like what restaurants I go to and my friends and like how I routines I have in my spaces like. And so I think it's interesting because changing one part of your life, whereas like with moving, that's a little bit more straightforward because you just figure it out. But if it's, Melissa, like you were saying, a more internal change, it's not just, oh, I just have to change my mindset. It's like, well, what relationships do I have to either change friendships or change the dynamic, how I live my life, my thoughts, my work. And so like I can see how it's easy to like change everything at once because like no matter what, everything is going to change to some extent anyways. And so if you're trying to like change all like the impacts and all the ripples, like I don't know, it makes sense.
To highlight the truth y'all are bringing out, everything is relational, like everything. To Leah's point, one shift that we make not only affects everything else in our own bodies and in our own like small world, it will affect the world around us for better or worse. Like every bit of it is relational. And that's why hopefully when we say we want to move or act or think intentionally, that just means like we're literally putting, you know, thought into why am I doing this thing, this moment, this action, whatever, because it will affect. And that's a beautiful thing to just have awareness of. So thank you for that, Leah. Hauser, were you going to say something?
Yeah, thanks. JJ, are you a 7 on the Enneagram? 2. Okay. Strong 7 energy happening in your testimony there. Anyway.
I also felt that.
I was interviewed for a podcast about a week ago, and it'll be out a week from tomorrow. And the guy was asking me about my career and about my life and everything. And he said, so, you know, what do you believe now that you believed when you were 20? And this is, you know, a Christian music industry podcast. And in that world, just like kind of in the church world, it's very important, not how you live, but what you think, what you believe, you know, what tenets what boxes do you mark off? And the first thing out of my mouth was, I quoted Muhammad Ali. And I said, Muhammad Ali said, the man who believes everything at 50 that he believed at age 20 has wasted 30 years of his life. And then I said, I thought I knew it all when I was 20 and 30 years old. And now I realize how little I really truly do know. And I said, I follow Jesus. And because in that, I believe that Jesus didn't say, worship me. Jesus didn't even say, love me. He said, follow me. And so I believe that I can do that with a clear heart and a clear conscience, that I am paying attention to the red letters and living in that way. So I don't think I blew up my career in this podcast, but it speaks to change, and the change that many of you have watched me, you know, go through in the last 10 years, which has just been such an honor to do it in your midst and kind of walking side by side in all of it as well. Thanks.
I love that. Yeah, there is deep comfort in like, okay, we're all on this road, honoring that there are many roads out there that many people are taking. It's just comforting to know that we've taken this journey together in so many ways. Anybody else? Chris, did I miss any details of that story?
Well done. Well done, you. I was very impressed.
I thought you would be. And
I don't know that I could add much to it. I makes me want to go dig out my documentary. There's I think the documentary is called No Way Home, but it chronicles the tour of 1966. And
Yeah, supposedly there's an audio of that guy or not the guy and ask. Yeah.
And I mean, Bob Dylan's a prophet. He's always been a prophet. And you will see me in deep, sincere mourning for a while when he dies. He's very old, but anyway, nor does he brush his teeth ever. He doesn't brush his teeth. Another little trivia piece, which is so grotesque. Anyway.
Don't let Hutch hear it. Leah, you got more?
Yeah, I have a thought. This is, as I feel like often my thoughts are, less of a here is an opinion and more of a here's something that's floating in my brain that maybe can float in your brains too. It kind of has to do with change. It kind of has more to do with what you were saying about like learning from other people. And I don't know, I was listening to, I know some of you know Mike McHargue. I was listening to his new podcast show thing, and one of the things he said up front was that the purpose of his show is to encourage or promote or teach empathetic skepticism. Or maybe it was skeptical empathy. I don't know. But it was this both to have empathy and to have skepticism. And thinking specifically in terms of where we are politically divided and on social issues and things like that, I see myself in that phrase, and I think it's real easy for me to be empathetic to people that agree with me and probably not be as critical of things that they say, even when I should be. And then for people who disagree with me to be really skeptical of what they say, but not have as much empathy to try to understand where they're coming or to see things from their perspective. So I just really liked that juxtaposition of those two words. And also in terms of thinking about change and adjusting both to a new political administration and to like learning and changing from people around us. I think both empathy and skepticism, but like I think both of those together are just a cool perspective and a way to approach the world.
I love that. Will you share that podcast link, please, in the community page?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Dougie, Monica, Mom, Sarah, any other thoughts or anything? You do not have to talk, but I just want to invite you into it if you have something you want to say. Cece said nope.
Conversion piece to me is big. I mean, because obviously, look at my life, converted from one side to the other, and people thought I'd betrayed them, and I didn't. I just wanted to be above ground. And well, Bob Dylan's case, it's funnier. There's no doubt about it, and more interesting in a lot of ways. But didn't betray anybody. You know, I didn't lie to anybody, and I never thought it was conversion. I really didn't in that sense until you mentioned that earlier, Melissa. I really didn't. And conversion, so much, I've never voted straight blue ticket until this year. Well, there's one independent on it, but you know, so much change. It's like I feel like we all have to be pioneers in this too. It's like we're not just going to sit around on our hands and let someone else do it, because every time we do that, nothing gets done. As you know, the whole old saying goes: if you want something done, do it yourself. And I mean, politically here in Murray County, there's a guy a couple of years ago who's on a red ticket, and I couldn't vote for him. I know in business-wise, I just couldn't do it. He proved himself to be another big ticket Republican politician with, you know, centralized government, and no one saw it. I was going to write about it, but I'm like, why? not going to change anyone's mind around here. It just isn't. And maybe I should have tried at least. But yeah, sometimes conversion is the biggest deal, and then we keep changing from there. It seems like we just don't stay stagnant. As much as I would like life to settle down a little bit, I don't think it'd be as fun just sitting around doing nothing anymore like I used to. Come home, watch TV, drink a few beers. No, I don't want that life anymore. I really don't. Not in the least. So.
Yeah, I think something that's really hard for me as I like process this is like the grief that I have to go through when change happens. And I was just like looking back at a journal, and I keep like a list of like every month or so, just like things I'm grieving, and then like copy that list over and say like, okay, how are we changing? How are we, what do we still need to unpack or whatever? And but that's really hard for me to do that practice of not just changing and then just reframing and running ahead and doing the next right thing, without, taking the time to, like you said earlier, make sure it is clear so that whatever fills in can take root and actually flourish. So
That's a beautiful practice, Sarah. Writing it,
yeah.
popping it. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you, Monica.
Yeah.
I think we're reminded in the Stranger Book Club, Valerie Carr and all the stories she shared from the sick faith. They really do like feel the damn thing, like whatever it is, the good, the bad, the ugly. They have, it's ingrained in that community to really face it head on. And we talked about the other night, that's not ingrained in us, to learn how to grieve and to heal and to honor, and then allow that to be let go of so you have new space. So thank you for naming that. And Monica, it's really interesting to think. I appreciate you talking about your own life in conversion, because example I gave, you betrayed those people just because you changed. And so the point I would make then is betrayal is sometimes necessary for you to continue to, you meaning any of us, continue to become what this potential we have to actually be. And the problem is we want to hold people, and we've tried to hold God, right, into box, like, here we are, we're done growing, you're done, you need to be this because this is what I have figured out. And then when those things break open and break apart, that's when the betrayal is felt, right? But I don't know that that's necessarily needs to be held up as a bad thing. It is something that needs to be grieved on your end and their end, but it's not necessarily something that we need to put as, like when I'm looking up a definition of betrayal, obviously it all seems very negative. Like, you're betraying your country, you're betraying blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I think the point is, and what we looked at today is like, no, I mean, ultimately you're going to, if you continue to grow and change and become, like, that's the thing, like we're honoring each other's being, but we're also trusting that there's more that we're going to become, like as individuals and together collectively as a community and as a nation and as a world. And so betrayal is going to be a part of that process, like unintentional betrayal, basically. Yeah, Linda.
I think really it's choosing who you're going to betray. Are you going to betray yourself by not changing, or are you going to betray somebody out there who wants you to stay the same?
Good. And it's different. We're not saying, because again, my frustration with the self-help industry and what so many are saying, it's not like screw the rest of the world, I do me, and I'm putting my self-interest, like that's a different, what you're talking about. And I think we all know this, but you're talking about like a deep honoring of actually who I am and who I've become, in a way that it is being very much accountable to the world around me, right? It's not dismissive of that. Again, back to Monica, that's 100% what we all know, those of us that have journeyed with you and have been able to hear so much of your story over the years. Like, we know you were like, no, this is who I am and who I need to continue to become. And the people that felt betrayed and hurt by that were the ones that weren't willing to listen and lean in and understand and honor you and your magic. So
it's a great way to put it. In fact, I wrote something yesterday about my 6 years since it came out last night. And in-laws, I haven't seen them since then, but it's funny how my ex, she's come around a lot, and she sees that it was meant to be, our relationship sucked to begin with, but we're better friends now. We don't talk a lot, but we can still yuck it up and be there for the kids and everything else. And it's like, I didn't think we'd ever get to that point. So just have something that of change in her heart. And I found out she works with one gay guy, one trans dude. So it's kind of sleep. I think the whole God works in mysterious ways things is really true. It's like, and she talks about him sometimes, hey, he said this, he said that. I'm like, you got the pronouns wrong, but you're still talking to the person. So that's all that matters, you know, at this point in time. So, you know, there is hope. So we'll see, we shall see, you know.
Love it.
I had one other comment about what was said about the idea. I'm sorry, I'm not doing very well today physically, and so it affects my brain. But the idea that we don't grieve, it's not in our culture for us to grieve. It's in our culture for us to bulldoze on to the next thing. And when we do that, like what Sarah was saying, you can't take root. If you don't take the time to do the grief, then you're just putting a layer of cement on there. And the next thing that's on top of it doesn't get to take root down into your being because you haven't done the work to be. The grief is real. And that's just such a very important piece of all of this. Not to get stuck in the grief, because a lot of people then do that too, and just wallow in that grief, and it becomes self-pity, and you don't get anywhere with that either, but to actually feel it and move through it. And that's something that I felt reading the See No Stranger book. She talks about how the Sikh community really does that. They stay in the moment and they feel what's happening for real, and
Present.
then they are able to move through life in a very different way than the typical American culture instructs us to.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for that addition. Yeah, Nathan.
I just had one more thing to say on the betrayal piece, which was just, I think it's often not a betrayal of an individual. That is to say, like in, you know, our case, by changing, I'm not betraying someone else. I'm betraying someone else's idea of who I should be. And that is, I think that's critical to understand, especially in the light of like, so many of us coming from religious backgrounds, we put on the facade, right, to fit into whatever the cultural norm of evangelical culture suggested that we should. And I still do today to some degree, right, with my parents. Like, they don't know the degree to which I have changed. And that's intentional because I just want to keep that relationship as close as possible, acknowledging that, you know, to do so means that I kind of have to speak in a little bit of code or when I'm around them, right? I can say the words because I'm well practiced in saying the words without necessarily sharing the meaning that they necessarily do with those things. But yeah, to essentially share, right, where I am actually at spiritually would be they would consider that to be a betrayal of the way that they had raised me. And that's, you know, sad and unfortunate, but that's just the reality. They came to us. We're supposed to have a Thanksgiving in Colorado this year, and so we don't want any politics at Thanksgiving. And it's like, I mean, okay, that's fine, but on the other hand, it's like so much of our life you would consider politics, and I would consider life, and that's just it's just a sad place to be able to not even be able to have those deeper conversations with your family, because to do so would create betrayal. And again, betrayal of an idea, not of an individual.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I wrote it down. I think that's beautiful and good insight. And, you know, so many of us feel right along with you, and are in really similar circumstances, and grateful that we have you all that we can talk about life and push and challenge each other and figure out ways we can continue to, you know, push into the relationships where there isn't much in common. Yeah, that's a good whole other conversation that, you know, we've discussed in part over the years that continues to need to be discussed, is how we honor those people that we love and they love us, but continue to be honest about who we are, but in ways that hopefully won't fully damage those relationships. Yeah, it's a tough call, especially coming into the holiday season. Okay, y'all. What a lovely hour and 20 minutes or so. So I put on the community page, and I really, not that I don't care about what other people say, but you all are the ones that are more consistently here than not. Our next gathering is supposed to be the 22nd. I know that Johns are out with travel. Anybody else know that they're also like, that's a no-go? Because I'd rather plan it around.
I wrote on there just recently that I'll be out of town too. So
okay, Sarah's out. What about, I mean, does it feel like you want to try to come together even for an abbreviated something to like touch base before you go into a hard week? Would you prefer that? Okay. I wonder if we could possibly meet earlier that Sunday, if that would affect us. I can put it on the community page and us sort of get a feel for those of us that can. Okay, great. Well, I'll check in on that. Thanks for that. Update 2, Sarah's school. You all know Sarah works at a lovely charter school here in town, and they are going to be who we partner with for Winter Coat Project. So we're so excited about that. We're getting details from her this week, and we'll be talking about it soon. Also, if you didn't see on the Instagram page, Haven won this contest with this mask that we buy from LA, which happens to be a Black-owned small business, which I found out after the fact, but they've been trying to give away 1 million masks, and these masks are nice. Like, you wash them, you can rewear them, they stay up off your face. Anyway, she won a contest, and they donated it to an org, and we said donate it to Imaginarium, and we can in turn, because they wouldn't let me donate small batches. I had to get all 250 in one place. So they're giving it all to us, 125 kids and 125 adults, and we'll be able to send them out to whomever needs them. I'm sure some of the kids at the school might need them, and it would be nice with the winter coats. But if you know of other places, I'm gathering information, like the Boys and Girls Club in Nashville was offered, and there's a lower income dance studio in Nashville that my friend of a friend was like, they could use them. So anyways, if you have other things, it's a really lovely thing that we're getting, and we can turn around and give out. And then finally, Winter Song, it's still a possibility. I have another call tomorrow with somebody else talking about doing a live stream situation. So just know we're working on that. Part of us is equally hopeful that we want something to happen desperately. The other part of us does not want to do anything that's in the midst of what may be another, shutdown where we are back to full staying at home. So anyways, just know that that's all being thought of and first out. So if you have thoughts on any of that, please comment away. Okay, do you still have anything to drink? I know we started with a toast, but we can end whether you have drinks or not. And this toast is really ultimately about relationality. It's another quote from Octavia Butler, who I'm just continually obsessed with, especially in light of this year. She's offered so much wisdom to me and countless others on books that she wrote in the 80s. So this is a quote from her. Partnership is giving. It's taking, it's learning, it's teaching, it's offering the greatest possible benefit while doing the least possible harm. Partnership is mutual symbiosis. Partnership is life. Any entity, any process that cannot or should not be resisted or avoided must somehow be partnered. So partner one another. Partner diverse communities, partner life. Partner any world that is your home. Partner God. Only in partnership can we thrive, grow, change. Only in partnership can we live. Cheers to life, my friends, and another good week. Love you all. Thank you.
Have a great week, guys.
Thank you too. Lauren, glad you were able to come on today and listen.
I was listening the whole time. It was lovely. Thank you.
Good to see you and the baby.
Love y'all, every one of you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, guys.